Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Version 5.8's banners are here, and you know what that means. Everyone's making a banner guide video, and now so am I. On these banners we have Ineffa's debut, as well as Citlali's long-awaited rerun. And in this video, I'll go over some tantalizing advice for whether or not you should pull for these characters. People that are familiar with Genshin Impact's meta are all quite familiar with paraplegics, because almost everyone's best team right now is literally just them getting wheelchaired by Mavuika, Citlali, and Shilinin. Despite that, is Citlali still close to a must-pull character 6 months later? Well, Citlali is a simple grandma. While she does benefit both Pyro and Hydro DPS characters, she was born 200 years ago to primarily enable and support forward melt, to take advantage of that massive damage amplifying reaction. Tired of Furina ruining marriages? Well, now you can ruin marriages at a discount thanks to today's sponsor, LD Shop, the world's most trusted Genshin Impact top-up site, saving you around 15% and developed by LD Player Emulator Group. The $100 Primogen package is actually $99.99 in game, but on LD Shop for new users, it's as low as $76.75. As for me, a regular user, I'm buying the 5 $100 Genesis Crystal packages so I can also ruin my marriage, all for my new waifu, Skirk. You don't even need to share your Hoyoverse login credentials, because all you need is your server and Genshin user ID. Then, after creating a one-time use credit card and purchasing it, which took around 2 minutes, I saved $65.56, and delivery was practically instant. And because I spent more than $80 since I'm a filthy whale, I got VIP membership where I redeemed a free Welkin Moon, saving another $4.99 for a total of $70.55 saved. Not only that, but if your first top-up bonuses haven't been activated yet, don't worry, purchasing through LD Shop will still activate those. And users registered using my link will receive 5% and 15% off coupons. Heck, invite some friends for some more 15% off coupons. And now that I'm $70.55 richer, now I can afford a new marriage license for my all-new virtual 2D waifu. Obviously this is a joke, don't worry, I'm still happily married. So what are you waiting for? Smash that link down below to save money on Genshin Impact with today's sponsor, LD Shop. Huge thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring today's video. Surprisingly, Citlali's actual kit doesn't actually do that much. In her actual kit, she only provides 20% Hydro and Pyro resistance shred, she provides a fairly mediocre shield, and she does have the most consistent cryo application in the game. Besides that though, her kit really doesn't do anything else. However, being from Natlin, she has nearly perfect synergy with the Cinder City artifact set, and being a Catalyst user, she has a fantastic free-to-play friendly option in the thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. So yeah, she's literally carried by her Natlinese heritage and her weapon choice. In total, for a free-to-play Citlali, she provides 20% Hydro and Pyro resistance shred, a mediocre shield, consistent cryo application, 40% elemental damage through the Cinder City, and 48% attack with the Thrilling Tales, although that last one does have some caveats which we'll talk about in a bit. Alternatively, she does have options such as equipping the Tenacity of the Millilith for artifact for situations where the Cinder City doesn't work, and she can even use the Instructors, although that one is a bit more niche and more so for whales with Constellation 6. Anyway, now that we have a high-level understanding of Citlali's capabilities, who do you actually pull her for? Well, we should all know by now the infamous peanut butter and jelly combo, Mavuika plus Citlali. Needless to say, if you want to draw out Mavuika's full potential, Citlali is by far Mavuika's best teammate, providing a huge damage amp as well as providing the best quality of life, freeing Mavuika from circle impact, as well as Citlali herself spending Night Soul points and thus battering up Mavuika. Their kits were clearly designed with each other in mind. Needless to say, Citlali is also fantastic with other Pyro DPS characters like Arlecchino, where Arlecchino can actually take advantage of the shield Citlali provides a bit better than Mavuika can. However, with Arlecchino, you'll want to space out her attacks a bit, or else you'll end up applying too much Pyro. Okay, this actually does bring me to an issue that I don't actually see many people talking about when it comes to Citlali. Prior to Citlali's Constellation 6, so for pretty much everyone, Citlali can feel a bit clunky sometimes for enabling melt. Sometimes even Mavuika lacks perfect consistency with her melts due to a large litany of reasons, such as Big Pyro pushing the Pyro agenda with its overwhelming aura, overriding the common man's cryo element. You will have to sweat a bit harder than the average single brain-celled Neuvillette to bring out Citlali's full potential. Like, for example, you need to delay Mavuika's motorcycle charge attack sometimes, you might need to use specific Mavuika motorcycle charge attack combos, and with Arlecchino, you should probably use the N3 walk cancel combo. All of this means that you actually do have to think a bit with Citlali, at least sometimes. But still, despite all this, she's by far the smoothest enabler of melt, thanks to the whole brevity of what she provides. Anyway, moving on from her clunkiness, a team where she doesn't feel clunky at all is actually Chaska. With overall, Chaska's best team including Citlali for reasonably obvious reasons because, well, Chaska basically LARPs as a melt DPS despite being part of the Animo Consortium. Hu Tao is another pyro character that can be used with Citlali, and she actually appreciates everything Citlali offers, including the shield. And this works fantastically with double Hydro like Xingqiu plus Yelan, as both Xingqiu and Yelan will enjoy a significant boost to their damage thanks to Citlali's Hydro supporting capabilities as well. Needless to say, less popular pyro characters like Gaming, Yoimiya, and Batman all appreciate a random 200-year-old woman's company. As for Citlali's Hydro character supporting capabilities, this is a bit more of a gray, bluish gray area. Unlike Melt, Hydro characters don't typically deal more damage thanks to Citlali's cryo application, but they do benefit from the Cinder City and the 20% Hydro resistance shred. For example, Neuvillette, who unfortunately enemies these days just have not been designed to be friendly towards him, Neuvillette can take advantage of Citlali. Okay, that sounded kind of wrong, but anyway, do keep in mind though that the Thrilling Tales on Citlali is useless for Neuvillette himself, as he's an HP scaling character, so Neuvillette appreciates the Starcaller's Watch on Citlali. To be honest though, unlike for melt DPS characters like Mavuika or Arlecchino, or your favorite pyro character Xinyan, don't worry, I don't judge you for that, I don't actually recommend pulling Citlali for Hydro DPS characters like Neuvillette, because the gain to his performance isn't nearly as much as those aforementioned melt DPS characters. And with Ineffa coming out, Ineffa is actually going to give Citlali a run for her money on Neuvillette's team for Ineffa's high personal damage, and we will talk about her in a bit. Now, another character worth talking about is Milani, but heads up, this team requires some 5-headed chess moves that's not recommended for most of us single brain-celled players. And unless you know exactly what you're doing, well, you're probably not watching my videos to begin with, but I don't recommend Citlali for the casual Milani player. Although she is actually fantastic for Milani if again you are willing to figure out how it works and to properly do all the setups. Funnily enough though, Citlali can be used on a Skirk plus his Kofier team, or on Temu Skirk's teams, as Citlali will still provide Cinder City's 40% Hydro and Cryo damage, but she might actually struggle to pass the Thrilling Tales buff to Skirk depending on the team composition, so do keep that in mind. This is another situation though where the Starcaller's Watch is recommended, especially with his Kofier and Fiorina, but we'll talk about the Starcaller's Watch in a bit. Citlali does boost the Hydro damage on the team, but as a refresher, Citlali doesn't shred Cryo, so she's not the best in slot option for Skirk, but she is a surprisingly decent option for Skirk. Now, for those of you who made a fortune becoming the pillow fighting champion of the world, if you want to upgrade Citlali's pillow, I recommend Constellation 2 as her top priority for vertical investment, especially for melt teams. Constellation 1 isn't fantastic, so only get that if you're also going for Constellation 2. And needless to say, by Constellation 6, she's pretty broken. But for those of you who don't have enough for both Constellations 1 and 2, what about her signature weapon, the Starcaller's Watch? Honestly, I actually think her weapon is a bit underrated. Not too underrated, mind you, just a bit underrated. While Mavuika's damage doesn't actually go up much with the Starcaller's Watch, and in fact it's actually lower for the first rotation, but in this chart I'm pretending like we only have 50% uptime on the Thrilling Tales Dragon Slayers, the Starcaller's Watch is actually great for quality of life and consistency. For example, you can funnel energy to Citlali and not worry about wasting the Thrilling Tales buff, potentially allowing you to get her burst up much more efficiently for content like Stygian Onslaught. Also, since Mavuika and Arlecchino's rotations are shorter than 20 seconds, this means that in optimal rotation situations, like for example Abyss, you'll only have Thrilling Tales' buff up every other rotation. The Starcaller's Watch is also great for non-melt teams, like Neuvillette, Milani, and specifically Furina plus Escoffier teams supporting like Skirk or another cryo DPS, as Thrilling Tales is either useless or very difficult to pass to the actual main DPS character. And the last benefit of the Starcaller's Watch is that Citlali will do way more damage than with the Thrilling Tales. And while Citlali's damage isn't fantastic, it can add up, especially if you reverse melt her burst with Bennett, which is actually pretty common. Starcaller's Watch is also good on Baizhu and Lanyan, and Baizhu can be used for Burning Vape Milani setups, and Lanyan is Lanyan, but yeah, overall, I don't recommend this weapon for other Catalyst characters unless you know exactly what you're doing with it. Overall though, I'd give this weapon a surprising 7 out of 10 pull value if you have Citlali. It's a bit better than most people give it credit for, but it's definitely not a top priority. For example, Citlali's Constellation 2, even factoring in the, additional cost of having to get her Constellation 1, I'd still give it a 10 out of 10 pull value. So to summarize, yes, I do recommend Citlali if you want to draw out the full potential of your Mavuika. And yes, Citlali is a great pull for Arlecchino and to also wheelchair older Pyro DPS characters. And I personally don't strongly recommend her for Hydra or Cryo DPS characters, but she can work with them. What I do recommend the most though is checking out my previous Constellation 0 Citlali video and my Citlali plus Mavuika investment priority video if you're interested in pulling for Citlali, as those videos just have a lot more actual testing and math than this one. Now we've made it to Ineffa, and by the time you've watched this video, I've likely released 2 full videos totaling at around an hour of content. But I'll give you a quick breakdown on Ineffa's pull value before telling you to just go watch those 2 videos. Ineffa enables the new reaction Lunar Charged, which replaces Electrocharged and scales off of crit as well. Ineffa also provides a pretty solid shield, and she does some pretty solid damage, and she only needs some Hydro application to work, thus making her fairly flexible. Ineffa will very likely become a very important part of the Lunar Charged archetype in Nod Krai. And for version 5.8, honestly, you're going to feel very comfortable for these 6 weeks and very powerful if you pull for Ineffa, as she destroys one of the Stygian Onslaught bosses, and also she destroys one side of the new Abyss 12. But what about her value if we don't count those things that we're going to have to deal with in version 5.8? Well, personally, I think Ineffa will age very well into Nod Krai, given its likely focus on lunar-related reactions, but that ties into my next point. If you are pulling for future impact, wait a bit to see what's coming before making such a decision. Also, you'll want to plan ahead in terms of how many characters you can get, because it'd feel pretty bad if you get Ineffa but you don't get, for example, a Lunar Charge DPS. Needless to say though, upcoming characters centered around Lunar Charge will likely benefit from Ineffa being on their team. Will there 100% for sure be a Lunar Charged character? Obviously no one except for the big wigs at Hoyoverse HQ can say for certain, but I'm a betting man since I play gacha games, and my guess is that yes, there is very likely going to be future Lunar Charged characters if Hoyoverse likes money, which obviously they do, and Ineffa's value should improve in Nod Krai. As for Ineffa in the current meta, while she isn't the best in slot for any top meta teams, she is a solid choice in pretty much any team that has decent Hydro application, which is, well, a lot of teams. This low requirement makes her quite flexible and allows her to be slotted in to deal with the upcoming version 5.8 Electrocharged Stygian Onslaught boss fight and Abyss 12. So even if Ineffa teams don't shatter the current DPS ceiling, due to the clear shilling from Hoyoverse from a mechanics perspective, Ineffa will currently excel even without her best in slot future team. and once she fills out her true calling in life in Nod Krai, such as supporting a lunar charge DPS, I'm sure she'll be even better than she is today. Anyway, Ineffa is a very usable character with taser teams like with Aoife and Sucrose, and these teams are great because they are low budget. She's also great with Electro DPS characters like Varissa, and to a lesser extent Claron, and she can also be used in quick bloom teams like with Alhaitham or Sino or Claron or Kaching, albeit that's a bit iffier, but it's still a decent choice. And she's also great with Hydro DPS characters like Neuvillette. As for Ineffa's weapon, the Fractured Halo, this thing is actually kind of ridiculous, catapulting Ineffa's damage compared to her free-to-play friendly options. Although we don't know what the craftable polearm in Nod Krai might be, but I'm not as optimistic about that as I am about there being lunar charged DPS and stuff in the future. The Fractured Halo also provides 40% lunar charged damage buff to the entire team, which not only buffs her own damage, it could potentially buff a future character's damage as well. So yeah, Ineffa being a robot and thus being technology from the future is a future impact pull. Personally though, I think she is already quite decent, and for a much more thorough breakdown, check out my other two much longer breakdowns on Ineffa down below, which will also include, her constellations and stuff like that. As for the 4 stars on these banners, Xingqiu and Fischl are great for those of you new players, as you'll get a very solid, free-to-play friendly lunar charged core for Ineffa, and those two characters are just pretty good even in other stuff. Sethos is, well, a huge thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring today's video, and as always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.